Hello and welcome to the Holy Rivals Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me is my co-host and partner, the Wild Ute. How you doing today, Ute?
What's up, Bomber? How you doing? How's
I'm
everyone
doing
out there
okay.
doing?
I think we're doing all right. I want to do a quick shout out before I forget all the people that were here early today. Nathan Campbell, Glenn Lumen, all the way from the Philippines.
Oh yeah.
We got Earl Carr, Lonnie Johansson, Blake Phillips, Conundrum, John Peterson, and Craig Kirsch. Way to start off, guys. Appreciate you guys being here. Immaculate's in the background. That's even better. And we're really glad to have everybody here. Before we get started, let's take care of a little business. The first thing is please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, or leave us a comment or suggestion, and let us know how we're doing on the show. We check those things out all the time, and we really want your feedback. It matters a lot to us. The other thing that we want is everybody to know that you're part of this conversation that we have here. We bring up topics, we talk to newsmakers, but at the end of the day, this show's for you guys, and it's our job to kind of bring those comments into the show. So later on, we'll not only have additional guests, but we'll have a time for either call-ins or we'll go through comments and suggestions. If you want to make sure your comment is read on the show, you could do a super chat, which is just the regular chat, but you just hit the money subscribe button at the bottom or donation button at the bottom, and it'll come up as a super chat to us. Or you can become a member of the channel and go to the Big 12 Mafia Holy Rivals page and hit that join button right in the middle of the page, and it'll take you to the 3 subscription models that we currently have. Other than that, Ute, I'm going to kind of turn over, I'm going to give you 5 minutes or so here, not give it to you, just say you have this time now. Tell everybody what we're going to be talking about early tonight.
Yeah, guys. So we talked about brand valuations with Bob Thompson on Big 12 Mafia show a couple days ago, and thinking of that point also with the Trev Albert news about the Nebraska AD saying there could be a breakaway of 35 to 40 college football programs. I thought it was going to be appropriate time to really look at valuations for college football teams. So a few weeks ago, I had worked on a side project with Saturday's Tradition, which is another YouTube channel, and Trevor over there, and we put together some analysis on really brand football only worth rankings. So we laid out for all the A5 schools how much each football program, only the football program, was worth based on historical information. And I thought it was a really interesting exercise to go through, and it's really, really relevant because of all the recent news. And if there is a breakaway eventually of 35 to 40 teams, obviously we want to know if our team's going to make the cut. And that's really what it's all about. Is Utah going to make the cut? Is BYU going to make the cut? Is your favorite team going to make the cut? And so that's the lens that we're going to look at today. So in a few minutes, we're going to bring in Trevor, and we're going to go through that data. And during it, if you guys want to call in the chat, ask questions, that'd be great too, so we can have ongoing dialogue and really understanding what the data is telling us and what it's not too. So we're going to look at, again, really the valuations for each football program and for each one of the A5 schools right now. That's what's on the docket today, Bomber.
The link, I had restarted my computer and I lost the link to that Google Doc. Can you send me the link again?
Sure.
So I can get it up. And then did you introduce the guest who's going to be with us?
Yeah, it's Trevor from Saturday's Tradition. He'll be on.
Very good. And you went and did this analysis on his show. You guys put this together. So I want to be very clear. This is something they did on a different show, and we're just bringing it up to display to you guys.
That's right.
Yeah, send me that link and I'll open it up again. While you're doing that, I'm just going to go through and see if we can pick out some cool comments just to start off. In fact, let me call out a few more people. So I left off with Craig Hirsch, John Coy's here, John Peterson, AF Blue 82, Kaufman, a subscriber. Earl Carr is also a subscriber. Lonnie Johansson. Let's see. Mr. Monkey says. Let's see down here. Boy, we got off to a good start here. Oh, Reed. S. Reed is here. And he's got a comment I'm just going to jump right into while you're sending me that link.
Sure.
Heard that Stanford does not want to step down to G5. Does that mean they would reconsider the Big 12? The news that we're hearing right now is that Stanford's actually doing everything they can to get into the Big Ten. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show after we do this valuation piece. But there's real noise around that. We've been saying smoke for months, but there's nothing hard and fast yet. So we're seeing reports that they are talking, but most of that is from Oliver Luck trying to get Stanford into the Big Ten, and that does not involve Cal. So if you're a fan of the Cal Bears, Stanford is not trying to take them along with them. So that's the answer to that question. We know a little, we don't know a ton. Let's see here. Let me get to another question. Did you send it to me? There it is.
Yeah, it's been DM'd over there. So
yeah, I got it. I don't know where it went. Like I said, I had to restart my computer. And anyway, all right. So let me bring this up, and let's see here. Share screen. All right,
Craig,
here we go.
while you're bringing that up, Craig, something he's asking something. He says that Utah
Sure.
looks like I heard Wildute has Utah just a tad below Ohio State. Yeah, I'm not that crazy.
Before we get started, let's call out a few things. Tonight, we were going to do an NIL spiel. That was something that we really were looking forward to with the two NILs for BYU and Utah. They are specifically, so we get their name right, it's Coug Connect and Crimson Collective. Let me see if I can bring down that page for a second. In the upper right and upper left-hand corners, you'll see two QR codes. Coug Connect is the one on the left. Crimson Collective is on the right. Take your phone, scan that QR code. It'll take you right to their NIL pages. We really need you guys to, if you're BYU or Utah fans and you're here for the Holy Rivals, begin to contribute to these NILs. Utah and BYU are very, very great schools, but they're going to need help when it comes to NIL Collective. So if you have a second, for $10 a month, click on the QR code and you can sign up and help build up the team. All right, so we got Saturday's Warrior here.
Yeah, so yeah, we've got Saturday Warrior here.
Yep, here he is.
How you doing, Trevor?
Hey, doing well, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We're about to pull up the data set that we'd completed a few weeks back, and why it's relevant is because Trev Albert, the AD for Nebraska, mentioned 35 to 40 teams might break away in the future. And it basically, what he was saying is football would be decoupled, not basketball, but football would be decoupled, and it would be its own essentially super league. And so the data set that we put together is really relevant now for everyone to see. And I've kind of outlaid a little bit of that, but do you want to tell folks what we did and our approach on how we created these valuations?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what we did is we were taking data from, I almost said Spotify. Help me out here. It's
Sportico. Yeah.
Sportico. We started with Sportico, but one issue we had with that data was it left out the private school. So we ended up finding additional data from the EADA, which is reported through, because of to the Department of Education because of Title IX. And so what's good about that is it allows us to pull information from private schools as well as the public schools to compare more apples to apples. But so what we did is we pulled that data and looking at their revenue, and we took the last 3 years, skipping the COVID year since that was such an anomaly. And from there, we kind of developed a way to a multiplier to figure out really how much to kind of evaluate each of the school's brands, kind of almost as if it were like they do similar with a pro sports team. And so in doing so, we kind of were able to put a number and compare these schools and really how they stack up against each other. And there were a lot of brands that you would expect to see with really high valuations. There were some surprises there as well. And it really kind of tells a story, especially when we're looking at all this expansion in why some schools are so enticing and others may not be. When us as fans looking at a map say, why aren't they going for this program? It makes a lot of sense. And so it was really eye-opening.
No doubt about it. And Trevor's the first one to actually tell me about a really important data set that not a lot of folks understood or are continuing to understand actually. So we were basing the revenue information for an athletic department and the football revenues from Sportico information. And that information was grabbed from the financial statements of each university. But as Trevor mentioned too, like for private schools, it just wasn't available. That was only for public universities that we could pull the Sportico information. So there's a place for the Department of Education in this Equity and Athletics Disclosure Act, EADA, that actually breaks out the finances of every school, every single school, and private or not. And it's pretty remarkable information, actually. So just to educate everybody, there are multiple sources where we can get this information. But what we're doing here is looking at football only sales revenues. How much football only money did a school bring in? And like Trevor said too, we looked at 3 years to get like a normalization of the 3 years of sales or revenues from the football department, and we threw out the COVID year to get to these figures. And in the finance industry, a lot of times when you've got like an asset like a sports team, for example, or like a company that you're buying, especially in the private equity world, oftentimes what will happen for a value of from a firm that you're buying is the private equity firm will apply what's known as a multiplier to the revenues of the firm they're looking to buy. So oftentimes it's like, okay, this firm's making $1 million in revenue. We're going to apply a 5 times rate to that and offer $5 million to buy the firm. And so we took that same type of approach with valuing schools too. We took a 5 times multiplier based on their average football revenues. So hopefully I didn't lose anybody. I know that was kind of getting a little technical. What do you think, Bomber? Does that make sense?
You guys are a little over my head, but that's why we're all here to learn. So that's all right.
And yeah, if anyone, honestly, if anyone wants to call in to ask any questions about the data set, it'd be great to have a link out there for folks just to jump on if anyone wants to ask a question.
Do you want to run through the deck first before we start doing that?
Let's do that, but I think that we could open up those lines too.
Yeah, and I see a question here from Mr. Monkey Says, asking about revenue, he says, so this is, sorry, it jumped on me. So this is revenue. I thought brand value would be more directly linked to media value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the media value is one part of revenues for the football department. Oftentimes, whatever the media distribution is, like we're all talking about media, TV distributions for our schools, that will be one part of it. But there's more to a football revenue. It's ticket sales inside the stadium that you're going to. It's the apparel that you're buying. It's concessions. It's all the commercial advertising stuff that goes on. So everything gets lumped into like the football only revenues and not just the media distribution. The media distribution is actually a fairly small part in a lot of cases for these higher end schools of their total football revenues. So when we're thinking about brand valuation, this gives you an idea of really how much money schools bring in from their football operations. So it gives you a good idea how strong the brand is. It's not a perfect science, guys. It is not perfect. It's not. But it's a really good estimate to look at and consider, especially when we're trying to look at the 35 to top 40 brands possibly that could break away one day. So,
which one do you want to start on?
Yeah, the penny stocks. And go ahead, Trevor. Why don't you lay out the penny stocks?
Yeah, so we didn't include all G5s in this. We did the ones that were most commonly talked about in realignment, and so, you can see a lot of the familiar faces here. And what's really interesting is that the penny stocks, I mean, there's no surprise that you see at the top of these G5 programs, something like Boise State or even SMU. But it's just crazy to look at Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt, and Wake Forest, who we know are kind of at the bottom of G5 programs, but they're all the way down here. And the UCF is actually at a higher value than some of these P5 programs. I mean, they're P5 now, but not from the data when this was taken. So they're coming in at a big disadvantage and still at a much higher value. And you obviously expect Cincy, who's a bit lower now that they've graduated up, that they'll, obviously be boosted up on this list. So, and Houston as well. But yeah, so that one was really shocking. It really goes to show why UCF, one of the big reasons why UCF was taken by the Big 12 when they expanded.
Yeah, so I see in the chat a couple good comments here, like a Georgia Tech comment. I mean, Georgia Tech, if you're thinking of expansion candidates, I mean, really, one day for the Big 12. I mean, this isn't good for Georgia Tech. They're getting a full media distribution from the ACC, and you can see they're still not bringing in a ton of money, football revenues. And so we're tagging Georgia Tech's football only value a little less than $250 million based on the approach we're talking about. But really, Georgia Tech's not bringing in a lot of extra money, guys. Ticket sales, apparel, and everything else. Not very strong brand right now, really, when you're looking at the dollars and cents. So it's definitely a concern for Georgia Tech. The one that's just glaring, though, everyone look at Rutgers right in the middle. Rutgers is a Big Ten team. Look at that. Bomber, check it out. Look at Rutgers.
Yeah, it's just shake my head. I don't understand, how. Yeah, that's the part about the 35 to 40 and the chances that this breakaway happens. I don't see that happening anytime in the next decade, but maybe, maybe by 2035.
They would definitely have to be shedding schools. I don't know how you could.
Yeah, I don't know how
they went to a model like that. And Rutgers at the time, made sense in terms of they're really trying to prop up the Big Ten network, and they were trying to get eyeballs, right? And now as things are going more digital, I don't know if, because look at Georgia Tech in the Atlanta market, that could be applied to them, but with things going more digital, I don't know if that's as applicable as it was back when Rutgers was added.
Let me really quick call out, if you want to join the show, I posted the link. There's a hyperlink in the comment section. You can click on that and come on the show and ask a question. We're going to be running through questions, though. These aren't going to be people coming on the show and staying for a long, long time like we've done in the past.
Yeah,
so we need to get through as many questions as we can. So feel free to click that link and join the show. You can ask questions about this. Also, if you want to do a super chat, if you do a super chat, those highlight to me. Or if you're a member, those also highlight to me. So if you want your comment read, there's different ways to get that done, and it's all in your hands. So what were you going to say, Ute?
Yeah, and like one last thought on Rutgers too. So Rutgers is getting a less than revenue share from the Big Ten, and they've had a long program where they got like a 50% revenue cut.
Right.
So that's impacting their number right here. But outside of that, I mean, like you can just see that they're not making a lot of football operation money, right? And like it just kind of tells you that Rutgers really isn't probably the worst brand in the Big Ten. Like looking at that, I don't think that's really debatable. So I don't know how a future breakaway would look or anything. I don't know if you could untether yourself from schools like a Rutgers, but it'd be very interesting.
Well, Vanderbilt's there too. Wake Forest is there. I mean, there's several P5 or AQ5 schools, right? So, and also think about this. This is UCF getting money before they joined the Big 12. The four new schools, Cincinnati, Houston. Once they begin to get that money in and they start playing those bigger games, the more merchandisable games, they're going to leave a lot of these other P5 schools in the dust. Maybe not Houston, but everybody else maybe. Anyway,
right? Like UCF.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. All right, let's move to the next page. So this is your value stock. Sorry, I skipped one. Here's your emerging market stock brands. By the way, I put the link out there. If you want to join the show, click on the hyperlink. Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah. So like the penny stock brand category. I mean, in the stock market, when you're investing in penny stocks, or you're hoping for like a lot of upside growth and stuff. So they're low value today, but you're anticipating a lot of growth in the future. So that was the lens of putting that. It wasn't meant to be derogatory, the penny stock brands. Emerging market stocks are like maybe you're investing in in India or like Brazil or anything like in a market that you think is going to grow too. And these are kind of like those the next level and stuff on how much valuation a lot of the brands. See a lot of the Pac-12 and some of the Big 12 schools falling in here. One that Bomber's going to be really interested in is BYU. this is obviously impacted by the media distribution, right, that the Cougars have been receiving over that review period that we had. But you can just take a look. Also showing up here is the Big 12 average of the new Big 12 right here. So right smack in the middle in that black bar, the Big 12 average, that's with all the new teams coming in. And it's just this is straight average. Yep. So
what do you answer this comment from Mr. Monkey? He says this isn't brand value, it's revenue value.
I think that that's a valid point, but I would counter that to say, how would you estimate brand?
Well, last week Bob Thompson said it was ethereal. It was like trying to capture water in a fist. It's almost impossible to actually define what brand value is. You can only go by markers that are out there, but that doesn't carry the whole package.
As a finance professional, it is my job and duty to try to quantify things like ethereal brand ideas, right? That's something that I would look at doing. You have to do that in the real world too. I mean, you do. I mean, it's not just based on the financial statements of a company's future growth and everything else. So you do have to place values. And just like the media companies are placing values on these schools, you've got to figure out some way to do it. This is one method. I told you before, it's not a perfect method, but I'm telling you what we used. I'm telling you in the real finance world, it's used often.
All right, Kaufman's joined the show. Hey, Kaufman, do you have a comment or question?
Well, kind of. It's kind of a little bit of both. I've been kind of hearing some things about, with this whole breakaway, could this also be the end of the NCAA as we know it? Because, how long are these schools going to keep dealing with an organization that is now, they're trying to throw their weight around, but they're waiting 3 or 4 years to make decisions, and it's costing these schools money, these teams, all this stuff, because it's all up in limbo. So do you think this breakaway could also be the end of the NCAA?
I mean, all these things we're hearing about are big ideas and challenges. I'm more common sense oriented. Like, we can only deal with what's in front of us. And so I'm just not big on big, wide statements that paint a bunch of people into a particular corner. So the whole 35 to 40 schools, I think it's a nonsense number to start off with. You're going to be around 60, maybe 66 schools, something like that.
Well, I agree. I mean, I'm just going back to what I also heard, and I think this was some big national guys talking, that you'd see the power conferences just leave the NCAA and start their own thing.
Sure. I mean, anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
It's just, is it probable? And on what time horizon are we talking about?
Well, I don't think it's anytime soon, to be honest with you, but I was just curious if that's what kind of brought this conversation on, if something like that, or that's what I was curious about.
What got you guys started? That's a good question.
No, I think that I think everyone wants to know where their school stacks up, right? I mean, like, you want to know if your school's going to be included maybe in A2 conference. Are you going to make the cut when it goes to, if you guys don't think it's going to 40 teams, then I think that's naive. That's definitely
no.
I really believe so.
It isn't. That's too many teams.
I completely disagree. Trev Alberts would hard disagree with you too.
Trev Alberts is an AD of one school. He doesn't control anything. Bob Thompson didn't think it was going to 2. So
I disagree. And so when we're putting this together, we're just trying to get.
Okay, well, we can disagree. That's all right.
There are schools that can shake out.
Sometimes you just have to agree to disagree. Anyway, that's just kind of what I wanted to bring up. I just was curious about it. So
yeah, I appreciate it, Kaufman. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, not a problem. Sorry, I haven't been on. It's just
it's all right.
Me busy, and so is my work. So
that's all right. No problem.
Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks a lot. Okay, yeah. Bye-bye.
Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Okay, you want to do the next page?
Well, real quick, I just want to point out.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. When we did this slide, the new Big 12 did not include the Pac-12 schools. So we're currently working in the background on updating this and some of our figures. And so this is not reflective of those ACC schools, but also you'd see that it's a little bit lower, obviously, by adding 4 programs from the G5 or non-P5. It's going to bring it down a little bit. But when you say emerging market, I would definitely think that the new Big 12 is a stock that we'll see rising over the next few years.
Well,
And what
absolutely.
and what we've talked about though is 60 teams, 3 conferences, not 2 of 40. That's just, it disenfranchises too many schools.
Yeah. I don't like it. I just think it's going that way.
But when? If you're making a prediction, when? How long in the future?
I think that it happens within a decade.
Oh wow. Yeah, I okay.
Yeah.
We can definitely disagree on that.
Like,
That's fine.
think about the decoupling argument, right? Everyone's saying the Big 12 is going to decouple basketball after the contract.
Well, it's an idea. It doesn't mean he can. He's thinking about it.
I think that it's something we all need to consider and keep in the back of our minds and know where we stack rank. Really, like that, it matters.
So let's talk about that. So you're talking emerging markets. I know that Saturday's Warrior covers BYU. Sure. So you're talking about schools that aren't going to get a full number from their conference for another 2 years, right? So you can guess what their market cap would be from today based on what the media values are going to be planning out to be. But until you get in there and all these new schools are playing big time schedules, that could completely change the dynamics of what their money intake could be. So basing decisions on the top 40 teams today isn't even close to basing them on what it'll be in 5 years. If you do that, then the only schools that would get in are schools that don't necessarily deserve it. Indiana, Illinois, Rutgers, those belong in a 30 to 35 team league?
I don't think so.
No, they don't. So then how do you value that then?
I think that they stack rank on these lists that you're going to see right here. Where does Indiana fall? We'll see if they make it. Like Bomber.
But that's on revenue. That's not on competitive balance. You're talking about money here.
You can talk about TV ratings. You can talk about a lot of things, but
no,
really,
I'm talking about win-loss records. I'm talking about actual competing on the field.
I'm talking about actual facts here, and this is actual monetary.
Football game wins and losses is facts.
This is real revenues. This is your real history of what you reported. This is absolute fact. Okay. Right here. I'm not everyone. This isn't guessing at all.
Are you hearing me? Fact. I'm not debating any of that. I'm not saying anything about the money. I'm literally saying, how do you take a school that averages 5 or 6 wins a year and puts them up against schools that win 8 or 9 or even 10 a year? When you're talking about value, breaking away and starting a conference, is it about the money or is it about the win and loss records and the best teams that can compete for a championship?
It's about how many eyeballs, how much worth your program brings to a TV network. That's what it's all about.
I think, anyway, we're talking about a lot of stuff that we don't know yet. So we're just guessing at this point, but I understand what you're saying. Let's go to the next page. Okay, there's your value stocks.
All right, jump in, Trevor.
All right. So this one is interesting because we see that we have the Pac-12 and then the previous Big 12 iteration of the Big 12 and then the ACC on here, all pretty close, neck and neck with each other, which I think is telling. And then a lot of brands aren't, again, these are a lot of brands that actually, I would say actually most of these brands on here surprised me that they made it this high. You look at Syracuse, Northwestern, Indiana, Purdue. So there's a lot of brands that actually, it's amazing that they're this high. And I think some of that is due to media revenue.
Yeah, sure. So you're looking at like the brands, and here's the Big 12 average. This was the Hateful Eight, right? Before the recent shift over the last few weeks and stuff, this was what it was looking like. And the Hateful Eight actually had more value as an 8 than inclusive of the 4 that were added based on, again, historical revenues. That's one approach to look at it. And you can see here some Big 10 schools showing up. The Pac-12 average before, imploded. This threw out USC and UCLA. But the Pac-12 average was a little bit higher actually than the ACC average. But now the Pac-12's disbanded. But K-State, ASU, pretty similar here. And you can see like, Purdue and Indiana kind of showing up right here.
If you guys want to join the show, I put the link in the comment section. Please join us. Yeah, and ask your question just like Kaufman did. So I got a question for you two guys. If you're the finance and the money and all those things, how do you build in your growth models? Like, in other words, have you guys begun a calculation based on what the new valuations will be on the new media deals and the separation of schools? Have you guys started that process yet?
After we had created this bomber, we decided that we need to go back to the drawing board, and I think the best way to approach it is throwing out media distributions altogether. And I can see Coos Corner actually mentioned this in the chat too. That's the best way to get a gauge on brand and how much money your school's actually making, without any media rights factoring in, right? Because the media rights is going to lift really high for the Big Ten teams and inflate those. But if you throw the media rights out, how much football operation revenue are they making, right? In their stadium, ticket sales, that's going to be a really good view. We didn't do that in this first iteration. I mean, this took a long time to compile.
Oh, I know. You guys worked on it for a while, for sure.
We really did. And so, I think the next iteration is going to be with that type of adjustment to get to a little bit, maybe more of a cleaner number and stuff. But I think a lot of the figures, a lot of these names are going to be in the same type of places, though. That's just my thoughts.
Now, what do you do with private schools? Because you don't have access to all the numbers from a Baylor or a BYU or a TCU.
Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah. So, in pulling the data from the Department of Education, the EADA figures, that is all reported. And so due to Title IX. And so the private schools have reported there as well. And so we don't have transparency into everything. And that is one problem with all these figures, is that even with the public schools, is that schools are going to count, place certain revenue streams and count it a little bit differently. And so even then, it's going to be impossible to have a complete apples to apples comparison between all the schools. But it's the best, most consistent single source of data that is supplied by the schools and collected in a single database. And so it still gives us some insight into the private schools. As you saw in the last slide, we had BYU on there, for example. So I think it's, again, nothing's going to be perfect, but it's the best insight. And for the most part, I think a lot of the schools we see on here, it shakes out. I think it really, I think it holds up with expectations. Not everything, but a lot of them.
Have you begun an analysis of matching the revenue dollars with the viewership numbers?
Not yet. And so with viewership numbers, it gets,
because that's brand value as well. People watching your brand on TV has a value. It's not necessarily a dollar or cents.
Right. And then we're getting into we're getting out of the fact based and really putting
viewer numbers aren't facts.
Bomber, listen. Okay, we're getting out of the fact based, and we're creating models. We're not a media company. We're creating models that might be inappropriate based on our own assumptions. This stuff right here is all fact based on real revenues, historical information.
I understand. So aren't viewership? I'm just asking a question. Viewership numbers aren't.
Viewership numbers are, and we just didn't throw that. It was irrelevant to these figures. Viewership. It was all about.
Okay. That might be a cool correlation, is what I'm asking. It would be cool if you could take viewership numbers, and maybe this next year would be a better marker, because then all the schools you're talking about, the main ones, will have big media partners behind them. So the 4 new schools in the Big 12, the any schools that are still in the Pac-4, all the schools that are really going to be under consideration for a larger sort of shrink down, like you're talking 35 or 40, that might be a good way to compare them as well. You could take the revenue numbers in a year, compare them to the updated viewing numbers, and then come up with a good correlated number or some sort of a ratio.
Sure. In financial evaluation, there's there's a couple different ways, usually about 3 or 4 different ways to get to a value of something, like a sports franchise, like a house, like an appraisal type based.
Right.
This is one method. There's multiple methods that can be used. And if you had enough time and you had all the information, you could probably blend all those methods to get to maybe a more realistic look. This is just a historical look, right? So
okay.
And this isn't perfect, but it's fact based.
Sure. No, I understand. I don't think anybody's challenging the numbers. I wasn't doing that either.
Yeah.
I'm just we want to make sure that we put everything in context.
Sure.
Because we've all been burned over the last year with people just throwing numbers out and telling us what they mean, and that most of those things were lies. Charts and graphs were given to the public, and we were just told to just eat them up without any question, and we ended up getting steered down some really dark holes. So we don't do that here. And so people are watching. It's really important. You guys know we want you to do your own analysis, right? Here's the data. You guys can make up your own minds based on what you know about your own schools.
And I would imagine a school like BYU is going to really lift too, right? Like once you get the media distribution.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Yeah, I know.
And so
my bigger questions about that shrink down 35-40. I think that's insane. So
yeah.
Do you want to say something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you made some good points. It is historical data, so this isn't projecting, forward, because so much of the landscape has changed, especially primarily for schools joining the Big 12 or all the realignment. And so, again, this is a look at the value that these schools have brought in. It's not necessarily the value that they provide, and everything is different. So, for example, a school in North Carolina could be of more value to the SEC or the Big Ten than it is to a conference that's already there. So the ACC, they have several schools in North Carolina. Would it carry the same weight? Maybe, maybe not. And so there's a lot of different ways you can look at value. And we strictly decided, because we were trying to come up with, a more complex model way we could evaluate all these things. And there were so many complexities that without all the information just created more nuance that we couldn't quite capture. And so we stuck strictly with this because it was more black and white. But yeah, it's looking backwards, and a lot of this is going to shift and change over the next few years.
And as long as everybody understands that valuations vary as years go on, the numbers will change. This is just a snapshot in time. Yes. But it is a good marker. It gives people an idea of, how much revenue these schools are taking in, that it's being reported to the federal government. So that's a big deal.
Sure.
Anyway, I posted the link. If you want to join the show, I'll post it again. No reason not to post it again if you want to join the show.
I challenge somebody to tell us how wrong this is. That's okay. If you think it's completely wrong, just come tell us.
All right. Now to your growth stock.
All right. Growth stock's like the second level up. It's not quite the blue chip stock. So like in the real investing world, growth stocks are kind of the next level down from like the top Apple kind of companies and everything. So these are all pretty well-known schools and stuff that are shaking out here. You can see a lot of Big Ten schools. Clemson's showing up in here. And this is the one that actually shocked me, guys. So you want to know why USC is leaving? Look at Utah reported more football-only revenues than USC in this valuation. And so that's pretty shocking that, and I'm sure that the Trojan fans probably didn't appreciate that much that they're not even.
We've got one of our members has joined us, Glenn Lumen. Good to see you, Glenn.
Hey, nice to see you guys.
How's Philippines right now?
It's a beautiful morning. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just getting ready to head up to the mountains.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining the show. You've been a member for a while now. What's on your mind?
Well, I've been in business for 40-some years and done a lot of business evaluations. And I just wanted to ask some questions and make some comments. It appears that you're taking the total revenue that each school is bringing in, and you're using the same multiple to come up with the value. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, being in business for many years and doing many transactions, the multiple is quite a floating number depending upon the efficiency of the company. If a company has low margins, has bad cash flow control, has product problems, warranty issues, that multiple can change. And so having every school with the exact same multiple as a multiple of the revenue gives a really skewed number. And this is the difference between a savvy investor and somebody who ends up losing their money in an investment. They end up buying a business and they pay the multiple. And then when they get into the woods, they find out they bought a pig and a poke. The idea of taking away the media money and taking in the money that comes in from other sources would be a really good start, because as you say, you get a school like Rutgers whose number is inflated because of the media money, and then you take a school, let's say like Boise State, who has very little media, and it's just not an apples to apples comparison. But I think if you were a savvy investor, you would be digging into the efficiency of each school. In other words, what do they do with that revenue? What do they produce? So you look at the revenue of a school like Cal, they have a huge amount of revenue and they haven't done anything with it. They don't have facilities to go with it. Where does that money go? Then you get a school like BYU, who is notoriously frugal with their funds. They get more out of any school that I know of. Look at their tuition. It's incredibly low. The education you get for the tuition is a very high multiple. So I understand what Bomber's trying to say is he's trying to defend our alma mater, but I really think that making a multiple does skew the results. But I appreciate the data. You can't believe how much sitting here in the middle of the Philippines, being able to have this information is just fantastic.
Hey, Glenn, before you jump off, okay, so realistically for these football only programs, right? We're not looking at athletic departments. We're looking at football only revenues that we could splice up. Okay, how would you go about assigning the proper multiple to each football program?
Well, I understand what you guys are doing, and you're trying to make this multiple even to get it. I just think clearly explaining that these numbers are skewed by a equal multiple would just help. For you to go through each school and determine which one has the best multiple is a Herculean task. That's what Warren Buffett does every day. He sorts through every single thing to find the gem buried in the dirt. But I would just like to point that out, that when you do a multiple equal, then it's for each person to say, okay, which school does get a higher or a lower multiple. And there are some schools out there that, Washington State hasn't done very good with their funds.
Right. That's for fact.
But
that's
great
true.
point.
But BYU has done incredibly good with the little bit of money that they do get.
Right. Yeah,
So,
that's true.
If I was going to invest, I would
into a financial evaluation project here.
What'd you say, you?
We might be pulling Glenn into our financial evaluation project to tweak these.
I think you should bring Glenn in, you two. You three know the numbers. Come back to me with something.
I've done just a handful of these transactions, and it took more time than I'd ever want to spend. I can't imagine doing it for 100 plus Division I football programs.
I think what's interesting about this is, we've had this discussion. We've been going about 43 minutes now. And what we all need to realize is the Pac-12 tried to do this for an entire year and couldn't get a valuation that justified them all signing on to a media deal. And I think that what that shows you is you have a lot of differing ways to handle money, and the way that they treat their media partners might be different. And so for us just to go through and do a surface down is one thing, but to understand out in the real world, they're trying to do the same thing, and in a large part not succeeding, I think is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, as an investor, if you would have saw the Pac-12, you would have saw that they put their office in the Bay Area, and they did they started a network before they had distribution. Your multiples would be going down like a rocket ship. You would have bailed out of that turkey years and years ago, as you saw the decisions that they were making. I mean, they were living in I've been to the Bay Area. I have a tremendous amount of friends and business partners in the Bay Area. So I'm quite aware of the inflated value and the different way they see the world than the rest of the practical world. And that would be the last place you'd want to put your headquarters. I mean, even the big companies are bailing out of there right now.
Sure.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy
Anyway,
for sure.
hey, guys,
well, Glenn, we
just wanna
appreciate
let
you.
know. Thanks.
And you's going to lean on you a little bit, I think.
You know what, Glenn? If you can give me some good multiples, I'm going to lean all over you, man.
Well,
that's fantastic.
I don't hate Utah like some people do. You have to understand, I'm kind of a, how would they put this? I'm a mission field Mormon. I never really lived in Utah, except for when I was in BYU, and I've got rich heritage as early pioneers to Utah. And to give you an idea, my college roommate at BYU married a BYU professor and is a Utah fan.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they have season tickets, and on occasion when I travel back to the U.S., he generously lets me borrow his ticket to the BYU game.
That's awesome. Well, if you ever have extra ones, give me a call because I want to go.
Okay.
All right, Glenn. We'll see you later. Thanks so much for joining and being a member. You've been a great supporter.
Okay. Well, I don't miss the show whenever I can. Sometimes it's not the best time of the day for me, but I try to work it in whenever I know.
What'd you think of the Bob Thompson interview? I'm curious.
It was great. It was really, really good. I want to get him back so you can get into more detail. It seems like you only got about halfway through what you wanted to know from him before we had.
We had a bunch more questions. We did. We were.
Yeah.
But we got 45 minutes, which he rarely goes over about 20. So I think we maximized our opportunities.
I'm really impressed with your show. One of the things I love about it, it's a really good discussion, spirited at times, but never mean, never cruel, never trying to hurt anybody. Can be open about the discussion. Everybody can put forth, their side of the story, but everybody gets respected, and that's what I appreciate.
Good. That's what we shoot for, isn't it, you?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Glenn. Appreciate it.
Okay, hopefully I'll see you. I'm hoping to make it back for conference this year, so I'll try to let you know if I'm around.
If you do that, we'll get together for lunch.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. We'll see you later.
All right.
Glenn, one of our first subscribers and an awesome member of our group here. I've got a I did. Where did it go? Oh, it's on my other thing. I actually have a clapping sounder that I wanted to use, but you know where it went? It went into this other thing. Let me see if I can find it here. Here we go. Clapping. I need to copy that.
I love it.
That's great. All right. Let me copy in the link again if you want to join the show. We're over.
Go ahead.
We were just over 100 people watching, so we've got a lot of people going. If you want to join the show and want your comment read, it's probably going to have to be a super chat. We have so many regular comments. We're getting buried. There are some subscriber comments that we'll get to a little bit later, but if you want your chat to be sure read, it'll have to be a super chat. Okay. Let's see. You want to go to the next page?
Yeah. My last comment on this real quick is just that we see Utah and TCU up really high. And again, this is considering that this is relatively short term. We took 3 years minus the COVID year. So going far back, and these two programs have done really well during that time. And so we're taking a snapshot of time, but they've really excelled, especially Utah. And so, I think they were one of those schools that surprised me, not to besmirch our good friend Ute here. But in a good way, that they were able to capitalize on that as well, because there's other schools that have performed well that haven't, but due to that window, that it's probably bumped them up higher than perhaps we might have expected.
And that's why I think maybe in the next 5 years, we'll get even more detail, right? We'll have more data sets to roll off of, and maybe that'll give us a better percentage. There's so many teams that are in flux right now. It's hard to say you're getting a straight across fair accounting, but it's hard to know, right? I mean, there's so many numbers. We have Anthony Mazzano has joined us. How you doing, Anthony?
So, hey guys.
Hi. So did you have a question or comment for someone?
Yes. Wait, I have to. I'm in an area where the internet's kind of off and stuff like that. What I was going to ask you guys, I'm reading articles from these reports are coming from like Fox, like NBC Sports, Fox Sports, and ESPN. ESPN specifically saying that apparently Greg Sankey and Jim Phillips are talking in like marginal talks to merge the ACC and SEC into one conference and stuff like that. Is that even realistic and feasible, in your honest opinion?
I haven't seen those reports, but really, I don't think that's feasible by any means. And the reason is the finances. Like, it's really topical to looking at just this information. While imperfect, like, it kind of shows that a lot of ACC teams are not on the same level as SEC teams. So it'd actually be devaluing the whole pool if you added the ACC and blended it and combined conferences with the SEC. So I don't see what the SEC would be getting out of that deal.
No, and the reason why they're saying this is because this benefits the ESPN, the network specifically, because you're just making it into one conference, because the ESPN controls both the ACC and SEC. So instead of it helps them with ESPN's finances to just merge those two conferences together and stuff like that. It helps the network specifically, not the conferences. It helps the network.
Definitely would. What do you think, Bomber?
I do you have a link? That's what I would ask, Anthony. Can you send me a link in a DM and I can look that up? Because I'm really curious if that's rumor or if there's some data behind it.
I can't remember where it was a tweet from someone. I can't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, you don't have to have it tonight. You can send it to us in the future. Yeah. I would just like to see it.
Yeah, and you were talking about the brands, brands for the ACC specifically for Clemson, Miami, and Florida State. Let's say Florida State is able to get out of this. Do you think they're just causing a stink, or do you think there's really something to them trying to get out of the conference?
Unless they announced a board of trustees meeting tonight, they're not going to get out of the. They're not going to get out of the ACC this year.
Yeah,
they would have to do it again before next August 15th.
Yeah, no, because can the ACC get out? Can the big teams in the ACC like Clemson, Florida State, and Miami get out of the grant of rights before 2026, 2036, or
they
do they have to wait to?
No, they can if they want to spend $500 million.
Mm-hmm.
There's billionaires who fund.
There are You're right, there are, and so that they've talked about doing that, but that's a lot of money. And
that's pocket change for half of these guys, half of these donors. So
they haven't done it yet, though. If it was that simple, they would have done it already.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No. What I mean by the brand specifically, let's say Florida State, like I said, let's say Florida State, Miami, and Clemson are able to get out, and North Carolina. Between those four schools, which schools do you see going to the Big Ten, and which? For me, I see all four of them going to the Big Ten. Because I really don't think Florida State. I don't think the SEC wants Florida State in the conference because of the fact remember, I'm not sure if you guys remember when they were independent before they joined the ACC. Bobby Bowden, out of his own mouth, said the reason why he chose the ACC was because he didn't want to deal with the competition in the SEC.
Yep, I remember that.
So you really think? Don't you think there's still bad blood, or the money trumps the bad blood? You think?
I think the Big Ten would love to have them. I'm just not sure ESPN would let them go.
Both Miami and Florida State, or just Florida State?
All three of them. If they can keep the Big Ten out of the South, they're going to try to do it. Not saying they're going to, but the Big Ten has sort of backed off those challenges, though, at least right this second. Doesn't
For
mean they
me,
won't
I
be
want
back.
Miami. For me, I don't think Miami's ready just yet for the ACC or SEC or Big Ten.
Right.
I would rather, if they're able to get out, I think they would. I would rather them go to the Big 12 and stuff like that.
I think the Big 12 would love them, but I don't think they're going to make it to the Big 12. I think one of the other two is going to grab them.
Why do you that?
Like the Big 10, for instance, wants Miami. They got AAU membership, and
The reason why I'm saying the Big 12 because I don't think physically, like talent-wise, Miami's ready yet to compete with the Big 10.
That may
or the
be true.
ACC,
That
SEC.
absolutely may be true, but I think we're talking about the school and the athletic department, not necessarily this year's team.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about everything. I don't think financially we're up to snuff with even the Big 10 in terms of
you might be right.
Our athletic department and stuff like that.
I'm only telling you what I've heard they're going to try to do. Doesn't mean they're going to.
Yeah. Is there any research that proves the fact what I'm saying? Like, is there any information that financially that proves what I'm saying, or some of that stuff is just like fans speculating, saying that?
Look at this table that we've got on the screen right now. I mean, Miami's right in the middle.
I don't see anything.
Oh, you can't see what we're sharing?
Yeah, no.
Okay. So Miami is right in the middle. It's right at the Big 10 average for value. I mean, just a little below it. So as far as a valuation standpoint, from this stuff that they put together, I mean, Miami's right there in the middle.
So they're not at Ohio State or Michigan level.
No.
No. Okay.
They're behind Florida State, but they're ahead of Clemson.
Which is kind of odd. Clemson has been consistently in championship games more than Miami has, yet they don't make a ton of money. How is that possible?
I don't know, guys. Can you explain
That's based on the sales, or you can say revenues of the football program.
Are they a land grant school like West Virginia is?
I'm not sure about Clemson if they're a land grant or not, but this is just based on how much money they brought in, and then we're throwing a valuation based on the amount of sales they brought in for their football. So Clemson, this is a way to sum that up. Miami made more football money than Clemson in this valuation period that we've reviewed, despite all the success Clemson's had.
Which is shocking to me when you show that. When you show that.
Merchandising, there's other ways to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the constant success, but you would think the constant success for Clemson would drive their merchandise sales and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem to be working out like that. Why do you think that is? Is it because they don't have a big enough fan base to drive the merchandise sales? Do you think?
I think that's part of it. I think
so. Yeah.
And think about local market. You're talking about Miami of Florida, right? It's a huge city, right?
Yeah.
Versus Clemson, South Carolina.
But they have the whole state of South Carolina, though, don't they?
Well,
Gamecock fans would argue
South Carolina Gamecocks are there, and the state schools.
You know what? South Carolina and Clemson, oddly enough, are like neck and neck in this valuation. That's funny. I didn't even notice that before, but they're basically the same.
Identical, yeah.
As far as football revenues, I mean,
how is Iowa in the top, like the top school in terms of football revenue? That's shocking to me.
I think that's Indiana, isn't it? Oh, Iowa. You're right. All the way on the left. Yes, you're right.
Some of it's because of the historical media distribution that the Big Ten got. I mean, like this last year, this data set actually is from the 2022 year, 2021, 2022. That's the most recent information available, and it's averaged over a couple of years. But media distribution.
I thought you guys didn't do media distribution.
That's going to be the next set. Yeah, this factors in media.
Oh, this does have media. I heard that backwards. I heard this didn't have that. Okay.
So
I think that answers questions.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because don't they cover the whole state? Like, don't they cover? Does Iowa cover both? Like, does the Iowa media market where they are cover the whole state of Iowa? Like,
I've just brought in Immaculate, who's an Iowa homer. He's been sitting and waiting for somebody to bring up Iowa for
I was like, I
probably
dare
a
you.
month.
I dare you to attack
Okay,
it.
so ask your question there.
Immaculate, I have a question. Does Iowa's market actually cover Ames, Iowa as well?
It's not just a market thing. Once they graduate from there, they spread out all over the place, especially like from their medical school. So then they go and they're doctors and everything all over the country. And they've got very good numbers in terms of their grads turning back around and donating back to them. This is something you grow up with in Iowa. It's kind of like Nebraska and the Cornhuskers. There is no pro team there. You're an ISU fan or an Iowa fan, and most people in the country are Iowa fans. So it is the major brand there, and this represents just how big of a deal that school is to the entire state, not just the people that go to school there. And then it spreads out as they move out and then have families elsewhere. And a lot of people come back to Iowa to go to school there, even if they don't live in Iowa, because of their families.
Well, is Iowa where Iowa is? Is that in the middle of? Is that in Davenport?
Nope. I was actually born and raised in Davenport. That's on the East Coast, East Coast as we call it there. It's Iowa City, which is about 45 minutes west on I-80 from the Quad Cities where Davenport is.
Okay. Yeah, because I wasn't sure if that area, like if where Iowa is in if that is considered like a suburb of Davenport, Iowa City, and stuff like that.
Iowa City, Coralville is basically its own thing. It's kind of, I think it's actually closer to Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Anthony, do you have any last questions? We're going to see if we can get some more folks to jump on.
I'm sure. For me, I'm surprised Miami isn't higher than Florida State, being that we have a bigger medical program and we spread a lot of doctors. We send a lot of doctors around the country too. Like, I'm surprised. Is it because Florida State's a public school and Miami's private? That's why they don't have a high amount of revenue for football?
I think Florida State's a little bit higher than Miami, but they're pretty close, guys. So I don't think that private school or public school had any factor in this at all, because we had information on both private and public schools. So Florida State might just have sold more apparel. It might be the fact that they sold more tickets in their stadium, because I think we both realized that Miami's kind of struggled selling tickets, so that factors into this.
They're in a pro stadium, which hurts them, to be honest. Yeah, because they're sharing. They're basically a rent. I'm a Hurricanes fan. They're basically a guest in that stadium. That's Dolphin Stadium. That's Miami Dolphin Stadium. So they have to share the stadium, because where the school is, it's hard to build a stadium on campus and stuff like that, because it's in the middle of the city, and they're trying to environmental people are trying to protect the parks around that school to prevent it from getting destroyed and stuff like that, to build a stadium.
All right, Anthony, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining. We'll see you later, okay?
Yeah, that was a good call there. Like, Miami Hurricane fan, man. That's cool.
Yeah. I'm going to cut Immaculate out again.
Immaculate.
We'll bring you back
to my cage.
Okay, bring you back.
We love you, Immaculate.
I want you guys to answer this, because this is important to me, that I do not want anybody to believe that we're spinning a narrative here. I certainly am not, because this isn't my data. So how do you answer this, Ute?
Yeah, I guess you can tell me that I'm spinning a narrative just based on the football revenues. That's really what this is. I mean, it's fact. Go look at yourself. I'm not manipulating the data. I'm not taking a different multiple on this data. It's just straight revenue, guys. You can squawk at it. It's just one way to value things. And so if I would counter this point actually saying, if I would have took multiples based on my own estimates and not told you that to get these valuations, that's actually skewing the data in my favor of whatever I want to present to you. I didn't do that. This is all washed out. This is all even. It's all just based on the revenue of these schools. So yeah, you can take it or leave it. I'm not saying this is gospel. In fact, this is just a historical looking and one approach to look at valuations. But as we heard from prior callers and stuff, there's some disagreement in that, and I'm fine with that. And
Jeremy, the link is there. Join the show and ask your questions live.
Definitely.
Come on here. That's the whole purpose we're doing this. We're not doing this to spin a narrative. I want to be very clear about that. If you want a narrative, you want somebody to tell you what this means, you're going to have to go to a different show, because that's not what we're trying to do. Certainly not what I would ever let happen on purpose. So, yeah,
No,
Jeremy, join the show.
And
Go
we
ahead.
didn't go into this looking for a specific outcome. I think we can challenge some of the assumptions or maybe certain data that we pulled or didn't pull for sure. But we weren't coming in this hoping for a specific outcome. But one thing, Jeff Fuller, who I know is a friend of the show,
Yes.
tweeted today using some of this same data and made a point. And in the comments there, I've talked about the point. One of the points we made that we see that based on media revenue, we're going to see some schools inflated here. For example, I think in the highest group, I don't think we're going to see anyone outside of the Big Ten or SEC, if I remember correctly. But then also, he said that they're also propped up by institutional support, and that's something that's going to vary by each school and program on how revenue is counted. And so some of this can be through certain fees or different ways that they can pull in revenue and count it towards their revenue that's going to inflate certain numbers. And so, but there's no way that we could get insight into all that for every school and account for all of that. And so there are, the data is what it is, but we have to know that it's flawed based on, every school is going to kind of cook the books how they want to.
Absolutely. If you want to join the show, either take the link that I've been posting and click on it and join the show and ask a question, or you can give us a super chat. Those we always read. And then eventually we're going to get to member chats as we sort of work through the end of this data. I want to make sure that I answer something Conundrum just said, though. He said this data is Tony Altimore approved. This is not Tony Altimore data. I'm going to be very clear. We don't use anything that even hints in the direction that he used to present things. Everything he presented was had a mission behind it. There was a reason he had an answer already. He wanted to make the data fit that answer. So I want to be very clear about that.
Guys, we didn't make any objective adjustments. I didn't change anything. Trevor didn't change anything. This is just the revenues of these schools. Like, you guys, you need to accept that, guys. Like, this is just one way to look at this, but this is just facts. You guys can go look at this. Again, we told you our method. Go to Sportico, go to EADA, and look at these figures. Like, we just took each one of these schools' football operation figures. Is really easy to find and times it by 5. That's it.
I think here he says what he's talking about is actually semantics, it sounds like to me. He says it looks like a depiction of brand. I don't see the word revenue anywhere. So he's taken exception with some of the labeling, I think.
Well, his team, I don't know where his team stack ranked up, but I could see how someone might not like that, right? I mean,
it's true. I know. Jeremy, which is your school? I can't remember.
I get it.
We've got Sergeant Pickles with us. University of Washington. Dog, how we doing?
How's it going, everybody?
Good. What's going on?
Oh, just here to, stand on my high horse about Washington making the big boy chart, and Oregon can go languish with the mid-level teams.
There you go. That's always what's so fun about these things.
I understand we can tilt charts kind of any way we want, depending on what metric to use or don't use. But for that period there, and I'm sure you guys saw it as well, I had people telling me no one wants Washington. You guys are overrated. You don't bring anything. You're lucky to get an offer from anyone. You're worth nothing. And I'm just like, I didn't necessarily have confidence we'd end up in the Big Ten, but I'm just like, you don't know what you're talking about, and you haven't paid attention to anything if a program like Washington, or as much as I hate to say it, even Oregon, isn't going to be, valued by somebody. It was just a lot of crap talking there with nothing really behind it.
At the end of the day, we're talking about numbers that mean nothing to the average fan, though, right?
Right, but it is what the TV networks are basing all these crazy contracts.
Of course it is. Well, part of it. This isn't the whole picture, but It is part of it.
It's a good indicator, I would say. It's a good baseline.
I think if you married this with viewing figures, you'd have a much better understanding. At least that would give you another data set if you could marry those two together and then come up with some sort of a number. I think that would help quite a bit, because viewing numbers will wildly change from
Yeah.
school to school.
I would say, I mean, the combination of the two obviously is going to give you the better picture. I do know, I forget what exact data set they use, but Ohio State typically ranks highest in viewing year over year over every single
Yes,
school.
that's right.
So,
And this year it will probably be the first year that you've had most of the teams that you could consider would be A3, A4 quality schools, including the new additions to the Big 12. And you say, okay, here's what is it? I think the new number's up to 63 teams. And those 63 teams will really, you can take all the revenue numbers from 2023, put them with the TV numbers from 2023. And then I think as we're doing the off season, in January, February, March, we can relook at these and see if there's any new things that have changed, right?
yeah, I mean, I can't speak to it more than maybe you could as far as how all that's compiled, but I think the telltale sign's not going to be maybe that initial year in new conferences once teams move around. I think you need to give it a good 2-3 years to see how it shakes out, because there will certainly be a novelty of, Washington and the Big Ten or Texas playing an SEC schedule.
Right.
Maybe someone tunes in to see Texas versus Arkansas as an old school rivalry, but people maybe necessarily don't care about it down the road as much. So
I think very, very fair comments. We have Michigan's is waiting. Is there anything Ute or Saturday's Warrior, anything you guys want to run by Pickles? Or Pickles, do you have questions for them?
Yeah, well, Pickles, I want to throw out there that Washington was one of the biggest surprises in that, and just how much revenue and football revenue they produce in the pack, let alone going into the big. So
yeah,
Washington's a big time operation, really, like football wise. So that was surprising. I mean, you're really up here with a lot of the brands you think. Guys, like intuitively look at this list. Forget our method for a second. If someone was going to ask you the top brands in college football, these are them, right? That's why I think this was actually a decent way to go about it. It's because it kind of intuitively makes sense, right? Texas, yeah, the biggest brand. Georgia's right there based on recent success. Notre Dame, of course, Michigan, Ohio State. These teams make the most football revenues, guys. Like there's real, this is legit. But Washington, yeah, strong. Above the SEC average.
Yeah, I'd say that part is actually probably surprising to me, given the top end of the SEC as a collective unit is almost unmatched, especially looking at this chart. And to see Washington at least holding their own against a school like A&M, who I figured being in Texas and in the SEC would exceed them. I think rumors of Washington's financial demise were perhaps greatly overstated with the rumored budget issues. I'm sure they have some budget problems they need to work through after a decade in the pack and, trying to balance the books. But, Washington's got a lot going for them.
This is just income. This doesn't have expenditures on it.
Yep.
Right.
Be very clear. This is not profit. If people are watching this and misunderstanding that this shows that these brands made this much money, that's not true. They might have grossed it, but that's without any debits.
Right, but am I right in understanding that the TV contract would be a good portion of this also?
Well, they did say the TV contract was, yeah, they have already said that. Yes.
Right. So this is that's kind of my point with Washington is they're managing to generate revenue. Obviously their travel expense is probably going to be higher than most due to location, but they're generating this revenue on a chump change Pac-12 network deal.
Right.
And holding their own, which is encouraging.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's knocking Washington.
There were some
not us,
maybe not so much recently. No, you guys are definitely. I think you even through the whole process have given teams a fair shake and tried to look at it objectively. But yeah, I'm curious to see how much of a boost the Big Ten could be for a team like Washington. Obviously, there's good examples of like a Utah stepping into a new conference, amazing boost and made the most of it. And then you have a team like Nebraska just ahead of us who will always generate revenue. There's a rabid fan base, but, just haven't performed on the field like you would expect for a team in a major conference.
It's very true. All right. Well, thanks, Pickles. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, guys. Have a good week and go Dogs.
We'll see you later. Thanks a lot. All right. Let's bring in a new person to the show. Mitchkins, how are you doing?
Great. Hey, thanks for having me on, and go Dogs. Like
Go
like Sergeant Pickles. I'm also a UW fan.
That's good because I love UW, so that's awesome. All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what's on your mind? What's going on?
Oh well, my uncle played at BYU in the late '70s, so I've always keep an eye on
What
what
was his
BYU is
name?
doing. Mark Wilson.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, he was the quarterback.
Yeah, I
think-
know who Mark Wilson was. Yes, he won
Yeah, he's
2
also
Super Bowls.
yeah,
Yeah,
he did with
I
the
know.
Raiders.
Can you get me his autograph?
I can ask him.
Ask him. Tell him
What's
you've got a
Zach
rabid
Wilson's
BYU
dad?
fan
No, that's not Zach
podcaster.
Wilson's dad.
That yeah, if you go buy like a BYU Vapor Nike football and he signs it, I'll pay for the shipping and pay for the football.
I have a football he gave me signed by I think the 1984 Raiders Super Bowl team. I don't
Oh
think I
wow.
can give you that one, but
No,
I'll
I wouldn't expect you to
about
give
the
me that one.
autograph.
But an autograph would be great, even on a piece of paper. I would love that.
Sure, yeah, I'll ask him.
Send me. All right, that'd be great. Just send me a DM. If in fact I can even supply a ball if you would sign that, that'd be even better.
We'll do. Maybe we'll connect after this.
That'd be great. Yeah, we'll do it on Twitter. No problem. Okay, so you're a BYU fan, but you love the Huskies. What's on your mind with all this valuation stuff?
Yeah, I had a question about the model. I work in finance also. I'm curious
Oh,
if
geez, all you finance people.
I'm curious if you're using like a 5 or 10-year average of revenue with a trend, or if you're just using the most recent year's revenue and then applying a multiple, I guess, or cap rate in some languages.
Right. I mean, you've nailed it. Like, so we took a 3-year average revenue figure to just if there was any type of boost, like a 1-year boost, we wanted to normalize that or keep that kind of steady. We threw out the COVID year, Mitch. So
Good.
COVID, really 3 years. We averaged the 3 years without the COVID year, and then we applied the 5 times to that revenue figure to get these.
So you're looking at like a 5 years of revenue being the value of the
So really 3 years of averaged revenue just to get to like an average figure, then multiplied by 5. So we're not combining all those 4 years together, then timesing by 5. We're averaging those years.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes a little more sense. I was just curious if you were using 2022 or 21 or, or a combination of several years back.
But Mitch, we've learned some new things from this session right here, like this discussion. So we're going to have to revise the data for a couple things. Okay. And the first thing is, considering different multiples based on how profitable maybe a football department is or athletic department. I know that's going to be really difficult to do, but we've had someone recommend that. Then also subtracting out the media distributions portion for each one of these schools just to see how much they've sold in apparel and football ticket sales without any media distributions considered. That might get us to even better figures.
I think you guys made the right decision not using a net operating income versus revenue, just because they can throw in so many ghost expenses in there to lower their taxable income. So I kudos to just using the revenue, and also using a 3-year average was, I think, the right way to do it too.
Cool. Yeah.
How long do you think if we were to revise this and come up with maybe a little bit better valuation, how much longer would you have to wait before you could start something like that? Would that be like 3 years to get all the teams full vote into the Big 12, then obviously the new schools in the Big 10?
To get to like more of like a once the new schools join the conference,
right?
Yeah, I mean it would take. We're probably 5 years in to get like a more normalized look. But we can make the changes and everything to this model, and we can try to tweak them. Again, I think that they're going to really shake out pretty similar, guys. I'm just telling you. Like, but if that's gets us even more accurate, then I'm fine with that.
I think if there's a way we could come up with, and maybe this would be a model we could work on, but you take the viewership numbers for each school per game, and then you're able to equate that into this, assign some monetary value to it to see if that would clear it up as well. I think viewing numbers is a pretty big deal as well.
That's a great idea, actually. What you can do is with the viewership, you could assign a higher multiple with higher viewership. So more benefit, right? If you get more viewership, there's ways.
Right.
It's a great idea. Anyway,
Well, for instance, like Iowa here, what are their viewer numbers going to be compared to X, right? Or USC is really low on this scale, but if you put in, well, USC is a bad example because nobody watches the Pac-12. I'm talking about schools that actually are in conferences people watch. Anyway, just an idea.
I think you could probably use a higher multiple as well. 5 years is kind of low. I know most like retail stores, retail businesses use like a 3 year. And then, commercial real estate properties tend to be in like the 15 to 20 year or sorry, 15 to 20 multiple, I guess, in this case. So,
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's probably good guidance right there to increase your multiple more than 5, maybe a 7 or 8.
you have a pretty good comp with, you could probably look at the Denver Broncos valuation for that recent sale and see what they used as, it might be publicly available what their operating income was and what they used as a multiple. But anyways, thanks guys for having me on. Appreciate
it, Mitch. Send me a DM on Twitter.
I don't have Twitter, but maybe I could figure out a way to do this on YouTube.
Just leave me a comment in the underneath the video or with the video, and I can get back to you.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay,
thanks, guys.
All right, thanks. Awesome. There's great calls.
Seriously. So Trevor's on East Coast time. Any last thoughts on this last slide and kind of send out? What do you think?
Yeah. So I actually grew up in Michigan. So aside from Michigan being ahead of Ohio State on this, my big yeah, that's right. My big takeaway on this is look at how many former Big 12 schools are in here that have since fled the conference, and that the Big 12 continues to survive and reinvent itself. And so, I mean, I'm just trying to think of how many other conferences could survive that many top brands. I mean, you have Texas, OU, Nebraska, A&M, and yet they continue to find ways to add new members and stick through it. And I mean, we've seen, very recently with the Pac-12 not really being able to hold together by losing its 2 biggest brands. And, we've seen it in the past as well with other conferences. So for me, I think that says a lot, and hopefully it bodes well for the Big 12 going forward.
Definitely.
Man, that's a great point. We have one super chat that just came in from Country Roads.
Thanks, Country Roads.
Let's see. 40 schools shrinks the size of the pie too much, as you will, alienate too many fan bases and kill the overall interest in the final product. Need to see the peak value during the team's highest success on field for 5 years. That's the problem with these things, right? Is what is the time frame? How long do you wait? Because the ACC could blow up in the next 5 years. So then how long do you wait for those schools to move around? It's always a moving target, right?
Mm-hmm. It is.
So
I guess I just don't trust the media companies. I know what Bob Thompson said a couple of days ago. They're not the enemies, but they're looking to make the most money, right?
Of course they are.
Their business, they have to make money for their shareholders. And so I think that in the short term, going to like a 35 to 40 school model would make a lot of money, but over the long term, it would kill the game. That's how I see it. I think that they would go for that short-term view anyway. So I just don't trust them. That's why I think it's going to happen. But it's all about the time. Is that 10 years or is that 20 years down the line or further? I don't know.
Right. Do you want to say anything else before you go, Saturday? Appreciate you being here.
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I'm a big fan of the show and catch it as frequently as I can. And so I really appreciate it. And you and I will have to go back to the drawing board and continue making some adjustments to this and hopefully come out with even better figures. But yeah, thank you so much. And all right. Well, thank you.
Don't leave yet. I got to tell everybody to go to your show. So everybody look up Saturday's Warrior on Twitter. And then you have a show on YouTube, right?
Yeah, on YouTube. I can chat in my handle, but yeah, you can find my through Twitter. You can get to it from there. But let me I'll chat in my
just put it in chat so everybody knows where to find you.
Okay.
And and then we'll do this again, right? We can do this.
We're going back to the drawing board. We're going to really tweak these things to make it even better for you guys.
All I want is more passion out of you. He wasn't very passionate tonight, so I want to get more energy out of him. All right, we'll see you later. Thanks for being here.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay, bye. Oh boy, oh boy. I want to come back to that super chat again. Country Roads, thank you so much for this super chat. I really, really appreciate it. And you and I are on the same page. I think the 40 school thing was a shot across the bow for sure, but I don't think it's practical comment. That's just my opinion. Anyway, so we've got Immaculate going to come back in here, and he wants to talk some ACC, some Stanford, and some Florida State. So I'm just going to turn the time over to you for a few minutes. What's going on today with those three things?
First things, just a little bit that I've been, holding on to while in my cage. No, it's all good, man. I actually was having fun. I was having fun out there with Chad.
I let you out of the cage as often as I can. All right.
I know. It gets a little tight in there. It's fine. I do actually agree with Oot on looking at how do you define brand? It's extremely subjective.
That's what Bob said, right?
One person's brand value is different than another person's brand value, and that's why people in chat are having these, very robust discussions about it, and then afterwards apologizing and say, "Guys, don't worry about it. It's all good. Like, it's your opinions. Think what you want to." I've never seen Wild Luke get mad about anyone disagreeing with his thoughts on this. He's pretty strong in his own beliefs, so you're good. If anything, come in here and challenge him at some point in time in the future. When
Please challenge me. Yeah, you know what? I'll actually consider your ideas. I really will.
I believe you.
He's been taking notes. If people don't pay attention, is constantly writing notes. Every show he has notes. So if you've come at him like Jeremy did tonight, very strong. He took notes on those comments. So
thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah, very much. All right. Keep going, Immaculate.
I do think some of the people's comments about brands were right. I mean, they were talking about it. It's a little different as you get to different schools because there's different types of inputs. That's the part that's hard. You're going to have such different inputs for this. You're going to have versus be donors versus be state money versus be t-shirt sales and things versus just straight raised cash, from donors, as we're saying. So it's going to vary. Some people also, it's kind of surprising for them that some of these schools, they have long time enduring power. And some, you have endowments which are meant to continue funding and fueling these things. These are funds that are continuously rebuilding themselves through investment, and they stick the dividends into this. So while you're looking at maybe an Iowa or a Nebraska and wondering how are they like that, it's because it's been built up over time. It's not just what's going on today or yesterday. A lot of people are getting involved with this here recently. Realignment. I mean, I'm a junkie. I've been a junkie for over a decade, so I get it. I get why people are all of a sudden going, what the hell is going on here? Yeah. And so when they look at your stats and they see some of these schools that they don't know anything about, because most people don't go to Iowa or know anything about it.
Right.
But they see that number and they're like, what the hell? How is that so big? Well, Iowa has a very long history with a lot of success and a lot of money coming in. And that's largely what you're seeing there. There's a lot of history in the Big Ten. But, it's a good one. And if people don't like the idea that you say brand for that, but that's to me what a brand is. I think companies, I think whatever it is that allows you to raise the funds necessary to handle business. And when we talk about brands for college realignment, it's about how much money you're going to bring into it. And when people talk about the 40 teams thing, this is when I switch back over and I am now with Bomber.
Hang on, let me get this comment from Summit Hawk. Summit Hawk is one of our subscribers. He said he wouldn't break it up. He'd go to big four conference model, which we've talked about several times. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Yep. You're good. That actually ties in perfectly. I'm saying it gets to a point where it cuts down too much. And what I think this is, I've been wrong more than I've been right. But what I think this is, it's a fear tactic. It's meant, they want to do consolidation now. They need to get done quick. They're talking to schools. Hey, if you get left behind, you're screwed. Move now. You're going to miss this bus. Move now. And then when you look at a Nebraska, you saw where they were in that list. They see themselves as one of those top brands. And if that happens, there's a lot less schools that they have to recruit against. Even if they're going to lose like they lose now, they would rather lose to those schools than to, some of the schools they lose to now. So like us, but yeah, I don't buy it. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me on that, including you, Oot. If you want to tear me down, that's cool. But I see that it's dilutive. It starts to actually push people away, and that's the opposite of what they want to do. They need to draw in more people. They're trying to figure out how to get more money, and they're looking at the amount of money that the NFL brings, and that doesn't mean you literally try to become what the NFL is, because you will lose people. You won't gain people. You'll lose a lot of people, a lot of donors. A lot of those schools will lose out on donors who are just not going to be excited about their team anymore. They're not going to be excited about what's going on there. So, and to go into with Sid Irish, the unsustainable aspect of what is going on, it's an investment. This is how best I can explain it to people. Right now, the money that's going in, it's not directly like, hey, we're getting this value out of it right now. It's an investment. It's an investment in consolidation. It's an investment in bringing together people and their autonomous votes that they have in certain other conferences, bringing them into these conferences that are going to make more money, because those schools won't vote yes on certain things in the future until they're guaranteed that money. So they're consolidating so that more of these schools get the money so that they'll vote yes on things. You're going to see a major push on the NCAA here soon. My opinion, but they need to get some different governance rules for the autonomous conferences that they don't currently have. And when I talk heavy about autonomous conferences, I don't mean the power that they have now. Most of that's being taken away and gutted by the NIL anyways. But it's about the future of what then they'll want to make it be, because they threatened to leave the NCAA for that. They're not going to just allow it to be gutted and not push for something else. So the money going in right now, in my opinion, and Moen maybe could talk more on that, but I believe it's an investment. They're investing to get to the point where they want to get, because the money there is going to be massive. That's just my way of looking at it.
Hey, Moen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. It was perfect timing. So we already went through this valuations presentation. I'm not sure if you saw that, but Immaculate's just been reviewing kind of what whose comments were they again? They were Trev Albert's comments.
Correct.
That there could be consolidation, 35, 40 schools, and he thinks it might be happening sooner than later.
Yeah, Trev Alberts is talking out of his ass.
Yeah, that's what I said.
It's what he does best.
Yeah.
I mean, that and hiring head coaches. So,
Mo,
all right. Thank you for bringing some sanity in here. I needed somebody to help me out. I was swimming upstream for the last hour.
It's all a negotiating position. This is just a shot across the bow that if you don't do what we say, we're gonna walk. It's saber rattling, just like Florida State did.
Yeah, and do you have word on Florida State?
Yeah, they're not going anywhere as far as I know.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Some of the Hawks, and this is something that Immaculate's talked about in the past, adding mini playoffs into conferences before big playoffs help, not too big conglomerates. What do you think to that?
I actually answered him in chat about that. That's something I've been looking at, and I think Moen is too. We just have different ways of getting to it.
Right. I think 4 teams, you get into 4 divisions, 4 teams. That'd be the extent of my playoffs. But if a certain thing happens, that might happen. You might have 3 teams and a wild card. So,
right.
We'll see.
I personally think wild cards are a must, because you're going to have schools like Michigan and Ohio State that have to be in the same division in the future.
Right.
And anytime you try to negotiate with a network about these future conference playoffs, and you go into right away saying, well, one of Ohio State or Michigan is not going to be in this playoff, they're immediately cutting you off at the top end of how much to pay out. So you got to have some type of a wild card. So in a year like last year, where Ohio State and Michigan are so highly rated, that both of them could inevitably get in, no matter who wins their division.
This is the challenge I have, when we've spoken about this several times, is that if you do playoffs like that based on an A3 or an A4 model, whatever that 3+1, whatever it looks like, unfortunately the teams that are better in the A3 conferences are going to get sorted out sooner, and you're not going to have as many able to compete in that final bracket.
Yes, and the final bracket won't be as big.
I don't think that
I think a
suits
lot of people
anybody's
don't like it.
needs.
I agree.
I don't think
I
that's
get,
good.
but it'll actually bring them more money, and that money will be more dependable. Their budgeting will know exactly how much they're going to get every year. Where
But it won't get the best champion though. It won't get the best
why
tested
not?
champion. Because you're going to have in the final for the SEC, you'll have Auburn and Alabama playing, and they're not going to be one of those teams can't lose there, but then go in to the final semifinals because they lost the championship game. You can't get those. You can't get multiple great teams from one conference, which happens all the
Right.
time.
But if these conferences get to the point of being 25, you got to remember this is a much different picture than it is now. Right now we're thinking 12 or 14 teams per conference. We're literally talking about a situation where you're almost double that. Like for me, it's 5 divisions, 5 champions, and then a wild card. This isn't like a small gathering. And for people in the SEC, they would love if the national championship was 12 SEC teams. They wouldn't bat an eye. They don't care. As far as the Big Ten, if it gets coast to coast and brings in enough, like if we get down Notre Dame, maybe a Miami, Florida State, they bring in some more powers from down there. There's enough big name powers in there to run their own conference tournament. And then if you got the Big 12 with this across the board heavy competition that's not those top end brands, but you just never know each year, that's a totally different thing now if you have a conference playoff out of there. Like that might be the most exciting conference playoff of them all, just because you just don't know year to year who's going to be involved with that, who's going to come out of it. And then for the G's, now they actually have something they can sell to the networks, because they can't sell the regular season, but they can sell this. And then people will watch that, because that's going to determine the school that gets into the final. And so, like, just numbers, if we get down to 6 conferences and you have like this type of a thing, you have 2 games a week in these playoffs, that's 12 games. If you take Fox and ESPN's channels together, that's 5 channels. You times it by 2 for 2 showcases, that's 10. You take NBC and CBS, that's 12. It's a perfect supply meets demand situation where everyone could have the exact right price, and people will get to start to know these G conferences and the schools coming out of them. Those become Cinderella schools that people kind of have a little bit of a connection to. Like, it's your Friday night game for those weekends, or it's Thursday. So people will watch them just because it's leading into this playoff. My opinion, it's just a projection, but these G schools have a say in the conference football playoff. So they're going to want something eventually at some point in time that benefits them. Just my thoughts on that.
Interesting ideas. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Mo.
I disagree.
Of course he does. He's from Ohio State.
I vehemently disagree. Like I said, I go to 4. You have a ranked thing on that 10th conference game of the season. Nobody ends up playing too many games. You still have 12 spots open in the playoff. You get plenty of people from the Big 12, Big 10, and SEC in there regularly. If a G5 school moves up into the top 12, absolutely include them. But I don't think you should be able to I don't think the G5 should get I don't think anybody should get an automatic qualifier.
Yeah,
I think the 12 best teams should be in.
That's my opinion.
If the G5 can be a Cinderella, if they can get through their G5 schedule undefeated and become a conference champion, they'll be in. They're not leaving out an undefeated G5 conference champion. Same thing they did with Cincinnati. They didn't leave Cincinnati out when they were G5 and undefeated conference champion. They're not going to do that with another G5 school. I don't want to watch a matchup of a 9-3 G5 school getting blasted by somebody that they just aren't going to be on the field for. And I completely understand the logic of, well, a Cinderella team, but more often than not, those Cinderellas turn into pumpkins. So, I mean, the one time you get, for every one time you get that upset, you're going to have 10, 11, 12 times of these teams that simply can't compete talent-wise just getting absolutely obliterated. I don't want to see a blowout in any game. I like competitive games. Even when Ohio State loses, I like watching them lose competitive games. I mean, just my opinion. I know Immaculate disagrees, but, you know.
I think more people would agree with you than would agree with me. I'll say that. but I think that your opinion is more of the fans' opinion, whereas my opinion would be more from the perspective of the administrator, the person having to run the budget, who wants that to be as predictable as possible and doesn't want how much is coming in is dependent upon how many schools you get into that thing. That varies from 2, 3, 4, whatever. Like, they would rather bring it into the conference, and then like the Big Ten and the SEC, if they hold this, the amount of money that they get would be so much more. It's not equal. Whereas now it's equal. Like if your conference of the Big 12 brings in the same amount of schools as the Big 10 or the SEC, good for you. You're going to get equal pay out of that as them. And guess what? They don't like that. And so people keep thinking about how they're going to cut everyone else out. They're not. But this is a way that they can kind of sort of do it without you even realizing that they're doing it. Because if they go to these conference playoffs, they're taking most of the money into that. And then there's just the smaller national playoff outside of it.
Hey, just for my own clarification, so Moan, you're talking about the 12 best teams, right? Like 12 top teams, like get in no matter what. There's no automatic berths, qualifiers for any
Right.
conference. Totally understand that. And Immaculate, will you explain your thoughts about it again? Like, so the 12-team playoff, who gets in? Sum that up again.
As far as like 24 and 25 or in the future?
Just like, so in the 12-team playoff, who do you think gets in? Do you think it's just the 12 best teams? Do you think conference champions get in the playoff?
I mean, conference champions are not going away. Automatic qualifiers are not going away. They definitely want to, like even Petiti in his latest interviews has said, we want to push our conference champions. Their automatic qualifiers are not going away. And if it's not going to go away for them, then they're not going to be able to get the G5 to vote to get rid of theirs unless you give them something else in return. Now, some people are like, oh, we'll just give them more money. Well, maybe if that's all they care about. But if they actually do want to be a little more visible, then they're not going to give away that unless you give them something in the future, like in 2026. So I think we're going to stay at 6-6. But if we go to 7-5, expect to see something that benefits the G5, G6, whatever we get in 2026.
Gotcha. Pilgrim.
You want to answer that question, Moen?
Yeah, I would just say, the G5s will take more money. They will be satisfied with that. 99% of the teams in the G5 are not going to make the playoff.
No.
They will get a chunk of that playoff money. That chunk of playoff money those schools get funds their entire athletic departments.
Yes.
Not just football, all sports. Those allow them to give scholarships to these athletes. So, yeah, I think the G5 would be 99% of the G5 would just be happy with more money and foregoing an AQ. And then, like I said, if a G5 school gets an undefeated season and a conference champion, they're going to be in. They'll get a chance to compete. And I've even floated the idea of the AAC and Mountain West Conference having their champions play each other.
Yes, I think
if you wanted to get that extra boost for your school to get into the playoffs. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways that this can work. I just don't think that you're going to want to stick with AQs because you're always going to get a chance of, just an unfair matchup on the field by bringing a G6 team in to compete with, like, say Alabama had a 2-loss season and a G6 makes it and has to play them in the first round. Nobody's going to want to watch Alabama literally just beating a school from pillar to post.
Yeah.
I just don't see that. That's not something that's not desirable to fans. That's not desirable to advertisers. You got to remember, these advertisers are paying for this. They want games that people want to watch. They don't want people to tune out after the first quarter when it's 33-0.
What do you think, Ute?
I think that there's some compellingness to having a G5 team in that scenario play like in Alabama. It's kind of like I wouldn't even compare it to a 1st and 16 seed in the NCAA tournament. It's probably like a 3 seed and a 14 seed. Those upsets occasionally happen, right? And like you'll get a Boise State occasionally beating an Oklahoma. That's worth its weight in gold when that happens. So I think it's worth playing those games, and like I would like to watch them. Honestly, you're right though. 95%, maybe greater. It's just going to be a blowout, ugly and stuff. But that 2%, that 3%, that's not, and maybe the upset happens, it's going to be pretty remarkable viewing. So I'll be supportive of it, actually.
I think you get rid of all AQs. You do 4. The champions of the A4 all get buys, and a 12-team playoff, and then the other 8 teams play each other, and then you go to the quarterfinals. So I agree you get rid of the AQs, but I still think you're going to get some G5 schools in, probably 1 a year, maybe 2, depending on the records. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Larry,
well, you're not getting rid of Cinderellas either.
Right.
A 12 team can go in there and knock off a 1. I mean, that's still an upset. That's still, you can still have Cinderellas without having a G5 team getting blown out.
Yeah, I think the point is you want to have them have access. That's the biggest deal. And however you secure that, whether that's through an auto bid, through a double tournament, setup, I don't know. But those schools can't be completely disenfranchised. They have to have something they can get to. Larry, you have been gone for, what's it been now? 3 weeks? Larry,
No.
2 weeks?
No, I was gone for about 5 days.
It's been like a year.
Well, it felt like a long time.
Yeah, well, the woman turned 50, so I had to take her on vacation. So
Okay, the woman. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
That's more important.
All right. So catch us up. How are you doing?
Good. Just caught this at the right moment. So, and I mean, it's very strange to watch from different perches what's important to other people,
right?
And what we think we know. Like, what was Michigan last year's point spread against TCU in the semi? So
I don't know.
Yeah,
it was 14. It was
you're
13
gonna have to have auto qualifiers. It's nobody's going to agree that's in the power conferences are not going to agree unless that's what's held this up for as many years as it has, is because Pac-12 wouldn't vote unless they had an AQ, and that's the only reason we even got what we're getting for the next 2 years. So without it, I don't think it's happening, in my opinion. I don't think you're going to get the votes. I think people are going to say no. And because it's subjective, these votes are subjective. Unless these teams play, I thought Michigan was going to beat the crap out of TCU. So, but TCU turned around and just got manhandled by Ohio or by Georgia. Who almost lost Ohio State, who got totally creamed by Michigan. So I want to see the games. I don't want to watch the same 6 teams. I'd rather go watch NFL than watch the same 8 teams play every year. It's getting monotonous. So if it's not going to include, I wouldn't say the Cinderellas, but if it's not going to at least allow opportunity, I don't know how much longer I would want to watch. You can only watch Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson for so long, and it gets old. So
I think that's fair.
You're going to lose more viewership than you think. It's like networks want to see the bigger matchups, but there's 130 teams,
right?
Which make up.
I don't disagree with you, Larry, but you're acting like you're not going to see Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, and Florida. Those brands are going to be in there even with AQs, even if they don't win their conference.
Which is fine.
They're going to wind up in there.
See,
I would rather a school in the Power 5, like say a Utah, gets a shot if they finish number 12 over a G5 team that finishes 9-3. You know what I mean? I'd rather see A3 teams in the playoffs.
Right. I get your point, but I really think for the health of the sport, there's going to have to be some opportunities there. And if you decide to go to a super conference and give yourself a harder chance, well, then, that's what you did. Like Oregon and Washington may have who knows what they just did to themselves. So I think if you're going to do that, there's consequences to doing that. And if Utah can't say win the Big 12 or say they're only 10-2, but they're second place, third place, and they're 12th, but there's a G5 that, I mean, that's just what it is. So it'll make the season games a little more important as well to me. So I don't want to see the sport die. And I think if we just keep conglomerating 12 teams to be the face of college football, I think you're going to lose everybody besides those 12. So that's just my fear.
I think there's a good possibility in 26 they actually go to 16.
It's possible.
Yeah,
it's
the
possible.
more playoff games is more money. So
and this is so hard too. Like, we still have a good shot at the Pac-12. So it's like, it's hard to get excited and look towards the Big 12 when we have so much in front of us this year.
Sure.
So I hope
absolutely.
so I hope everybody gives me a little bit of forgiveness there if I'm not like jumping into the Big 12 thing right yet. That's okay.
I don't think why. Yeah, of course. I don't know why that would matter. No,
Yeah.
Anybody who does that, I'm not sure they care, to be honest.
Right.
So,
Ask you a question, Bomb, real quick.
yeah.
Do you think that when it comes from a conference's perspective of wanting to do what they can to manipulate the situation, do you think that there's more money, that they care that much more about the money and taking away the chance for a bye for their conference champion, to give them a chance to have a week off after that game to rest up, recuperate, let the team that they play against have to go play another game, get beat up in there, come in? And I think that gives them enough of an advantage in that next game that actually helps get them through to the week after that. So it might actually get them more games or at least the same amount, but the higher, bigger games at the top end. It's definitely a boost to those who get the bye.
I think a bye, the bye is up to two things. If Notre Dame doesn't join a league, they're going to want access to that bye. So that's the first thing. If they don't make Notre Dame join a conference and say you can't by yourself have access, if you have a great season, then I think buys, that's one reason why they might, like Swarbrick might be wanting to do, we'll vote for 16 because that way nobody gets that additional advantage. And if we're ranked third, we'll just be there. If you say the top four are conference champions,
I'm just saying Notre Dame is one of the reasons why they're pushing to have consolidation, including Notre Dame, before they decide everything for 2026.
Right.
Because you're right. Because they have a vote.
They are. There are people doing
who,
that.
like,
not Notre Dame is, though.
Not Notre Dame, right.
Yeah.
People who are in networks, people that are at the top of schools and in conferences. Yeah. I'm just saying they in like a very vague.
If they do, is there anybody here who thinks that they care about the student athletes at all at this point?
No.
They don't.
Yes, but
after the championship game, they're going to give them 1 week off, and then it's going to be playoff games for the next month. So having the bye in college it's not pro football.
I actually think that they care more about the student athletes from other sports that aren't money makers, but the student athletes that are in the money makers, well, you're in the money makers. We're talking about
football and basketball. They don't care.
I know, but you're saying student athletes, so I'm saying I'm
talking about the money student athletes. How about that?
Yeah. Well, no, you're there to do this, and it's in most of those kids' best interest too. The ones who are trying to go to the NFL or trying to win.
Sure.
I don't think that they mind more.
But does Alabama really need the week off to be good against whoever they play their next game against?
No, but they're always looking. They're looking for an advantage, though. Do they?
Of course they are, but that's
sure.
You trade off.
They schedule FCS teams right before the Iron Bowl.
Yeah,
that's essentially a week off. So
I don't think they need a bye to.
I'm just saying. I think they value that a lot. You're saying they don't need it.
They do,
I'm not saying they need it. I'm saying they want it, and
I would too.
Maybe you're right. Maybe they go to 16 because the money's better.
I think 16 adds four more games.
Well, does that extend the weeks out, though, or is it the same time frame for?
No, if you go championship games first week in first week in December, minus Army Navy, everybody plays in that first weekend of December. Then you skip a week, and then it's starting the third week in December that you can start having playoff games, and that will take you all the way through the second week of January.
It's exactly the same as 12. See, the bye on the 12 is basically simulating as if you had a games at 16. That it's the exact same.
Yeah, I don't think I think buys are a short-lived thing, but that's my opinion. I'm only one guy, so
I tend to agree with you. I think we're probably looking at 8 in 2026. I think it drops
yeah,
down to an 18 field.
possible.
No buys, first round at home, the favored schools. That's the other thing you got to remember. Those schools getting the bye are losing a home game.
So
Home
what's making
playoff
up the
game
money?
is
You're saying the
yeah,
conference
that's
playoffs then to 8?
no. I'm just saying that I think they'll rework the playoffs to just have 8 teams. I
Yeah,
don't
and I
think it's
think they're
going to
going to go to
go up to
16.
16.
Yeah.
I
But
don't know.
where's
I
that money going then? So you're saying conference playoffs before that?
Yes.
yes,
No,
yes, but
right.
your 10th conference
Yeah.
game is your first playoff game. Then that would determine your conference championship. Your 10th conference game would essentially be unknown to you until after you've played your 9th conference game. So basically, let's say we have 4 divisions. Team in the West is the number 1 ranked. They would play the number 4 ranked in the East. And then 2 and 3 from the other 2 divisions would play each other on the 10th conference game. Those would essentially be your playoffs, conference playoffs. Every other team in your conference would then have a ranked game on that 10th conference game. Next week, you would have a conference championship game.
I like the idea. I just don't think that they would they would just add the 2 weeks on. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep it as few as possible.
Well, you're
I
not
think that
adding
they
2
don't
weeks on
care.
because you start all the games on week 0.
I understand. I'm
saying we
saying
move the
they would
season
add
back.
the games on because they want the extra games for pay. Like they'll have all 12 regular season games, and then like for you, you'd have your 2 weeks. But anyways, I don't want to take up too much time on that. But I don't think that they're going to try to make it as short as possible. I think they're going to add it on and say, make do.
Yeah,
Just make more money.
I agree. I don't think it's going to go to 8, but you know what? At the end of the day, the idea is the more teams we can get in that are valuable, that are competitive, and that can turn around and produce good games. That's all anybody wants. Everybody just wants better games, and that will drive revenue, and then that will turn around and include as many people as possible. You know. Let's see. Sergeant Pickles says he's got to go, but have a great night and go Dogs. We'll see you later, Pickles. Yeah, we're winding down here. I did want to ask Larry. So you've had some time to sort of catch up and cope and everything else. What's your outlook for the first year of the Big 12 next year?
Oh, for you guys in the Big 12,
No,
are you not
no, I'm
this
talking about
season, the
next
next
year.
season?
Yeah.
Boy, it's I haven't looked at a lot of the teams and stuff. We've got a lot of draft eligible guys this year.
Yeah.
There's a lot of juniors. There's a lot of guys that can come back. We're obviously going to lose Cam.
Yeah.
BYU should be pretty strong when we enter. I think the Big 12 was kind of in a rebuilding mode this last year. So I think when Utah comes in, I think it's going to be a lot more competitive than
Yeah,
people
that's what I
think.
said.
Because I think Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU, Kansas State always seems to be a steady force. UCF is picking up ground. I think that first year that the Pac-12 teams come in, I think it's going to be a tough league because I think you're going to have a lot of those Big 12 teams are going to have more upperclassmen and more continuity. So I think it's going to be a really, really tough year that first year for Utah. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. It's going to be nice seeing new games, if that makes sense.
That is true.
And then, and it's been so long since TCU and BYU have been in the same conference. I mean, I'm trying to figure if I was even a dad then. Anyway, it's been so long, so that should be fun. That should be some fun stuff.
Anybody have any
questions?
Optimistic
than that
Sorry,
one. Yeah,
go ahead,
Larry. I'm a little bit more optimistic about the 2024 Utes. I know we're losing Rising, but the team is extremely talented, fairly young. So I think that the Utes are going to contend for the Big 12 championship in 2024. I really do. I think that if you look at the talent on the Utes roster, 4-star talent, blue chip talent compared to other Big 12 programs. Utah really stack ranks well. We'd be second in the Big 12, only behind TCU right now as it stands. Our best coaching staff maybe in the nation. So you're bringing that into the Big 12. Not much changes other than rising. So I think that this thing's going to keep rolling. I really do. I don't know if
I
we
think
win the championship in 2024, but I think we're a top 3 team.
Yeah, I think we're right up there. It's going to be, like I say, I haven't looked at a lot of stuff top to bottom, and it just depends on how much of a rebuild mode we're in and what our quarterback situation is. And some of these 4-stars, we've got a lot of talent. This is the year where we don't get a lot of time off, though, where in normal years, we'll have like a middle of the road G5, we'll have our FCS, and then, we'll miss. Sometimes the Pac-12 isn't as good, and so we'll get some of those guys some reps. But this year, it's going to be a lot harder to get some of those guys some meaningful reps. But I trust in the coaching staff; they get these kids ready, and so I'm going to have to watch some of these Big 12 teams so I know what to expect in the upcoming season. But yeah, we're going to go in there and definitely be at the top, I think.
It comes down to the quarterback who's going to replace Rising. And this year, you got the toughest schedule I think you guys have ever had. And if your quarterback is not Cam Rising the first month, I don't know about this Utah team.
I agree with you, Bomber. It's going to be.
It's tough. Yes. But that's that's why it goes, though. That's what we're all here for, right? We want tough games. We want our teams to be stressed and have good games, and so that's all that matters. Anybody else want to say anything before we sign off here? It's great 2 hours.
We didn't even get to talk about Stanford yet.
Hey, 2 hours. You guys can stay and talk, and I can just leave. I'm just getting tired. But if you guys want to stay and talk about it, I don't care.
There's the whole reason for me sticking around.
Well, you better say it quickly. Let me get this super chat out.
No, we could if you don't got the time, then it's going to be
Country Roads again. Thank you very much for the super chat. He says, "Wow, you are extremely confident playing the Big 12 schedule week in, week out will be a different world from the Pac-12." I've been telling him that, Country Roads. I've absolutely been telling him that.
Country Roads, am I going to eat some humble pie? Is that what you're saying here? I might. I feel like the Big 12. Okay, so check it out, guys. So like the Pac-12 right now, if you're looking at the talent, recruiting talent, star ratings and everything, that's not everything. I realize that. But the current Pac-12 makeup with USC, Washington, Oregon, it has more blue chip talent than the new Big 12 will have going into 2024. Utah, right? Stack ranks about 4th or 5th right now in blue chip talent in the Pac. They'll be second going into the Big 12. We'll have a cohesive staff. We'll have a lot of returning players outside of quarterback, right? So I think that it's really built to succeed in the Big 12. It's pretty similar to the Pac, I think. So there might be some hiccups. I mean, the Hateful Eight know these teams more, right? The original 8 teams. So maybe there's some growing pains there, but I think the Utes are going to compete. I really do. But hey, I've been wrong before. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that we're all wrong sometimes, and that's the way it goes. Really quick, okay, I'll give you 90 seconds, Immaculate. Tell us what's going on.
90 seconds. Okay, well, I've been very adamantly against Stanford joining the Big Ten because I don't think they'd be willing to do what they have to do in order to do that. That might be proven wrong here in the near future. We shall see. If it does, it's basically going to take away the one P5 group of schools that ACC could have possibly used to backfill should certain departures happen in the future. That will cause a little bit of problems there. How does this affect Notre Dame's thinking on this? We don't know. But this Stanford thing, if this is real, this changes some calculations. I always calculated that as a 0% chance. So if this happens, this is definitely something to watch.
Moen, what do you think about Stanford's chances getting into the Big Ten?
The Stanford thing is real.
Right.
I'm just going to say that the Stanford thing is real. If you don't think they're not making calls to the Big Ten, if you don't think they're not making pitches, if you don't think there's a fourth media partner that's come to the table, just keep an eye on it, because we've had to wait till the 15th to make sure nothing was happening with the ACC.
Right.
We know Florida State's not leaving now. Now comes the second part of the whole month is where does Stanford land? Because they're going to land somewhere, and
Right.
they're making every effort to make it the Big Ten. And once that happens, that's going to open a lot of eyes for a lot of people, and in particular one team, and that's Notre Dame.
I mean,
If
if
Notre Dame goes, if Stanford goes, Moan?
I think if Stanford gets into the Big Ten, if the Big Ten accepts Stanford and Cal, possibly Cal, that Notre Dame takes a hard look at joining the Big Ten for 25.
How can they take Cal?
Yeah,
Stanford makes sense. Cal does not make any sense.
That was hard for me too.
They
They
both
make a
are in the
lot of
same
research
market.
money. Yeah, a lot of
Basically-
research money. Yeah, it's Stanford and Cal are tied at the hip.
plus the Big Ten could cut Notre Dame out of the state of California.
I just here's a comment from Rebecca Salisbury. How you doing, Becca? Good to see you. This comment says, what do you think if Stanford goes independent in football only? I think you got here just as we were starting to talk about that, Rebecca. There's a lot of signs that say Stanford may join the Big Ten. I actually think they have a really good chance to join the Big Ten, personally. What it does for Notre Dame this year, I don't know. I don't even know what the rush is to bring in Stanford now either. They still have a football season to play. Why couldn't they do this in the spring?
Because they want to get everybody on board for scheduling. It took months to get to the scheduling and the rivals that we had to get everybody to agree to it.
Right.
They don't want to do that again and have it blow up in their faces to have to figure out where Stanford or Cal or Notre Dame fit into things. So
they would be off a number, though. They would need somebody else if they took Stanford, Cal, and Notre Dame.
They could go to 3 7-team divisions.
Oh, creative. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that is.
And then you'd have your wild card in there for their 14 playoff.
One thing we know is they love slicing these teams up into different groups to use them for different purposes. Pods, quadrants, scheduling partners, protected rivals. College football loves all those names, I think.
Just remember, Nate, you said it earlier. You said the importance of getting Notre Dame into a conference in terms of the voting in the CFP.
Yeah, I think it's huge.
So
I do.
Now you're asking, well, why California? That might be the only reason why. If that
I guess.
cuts them out.
Yeah,
I know.
it still seems
This
it
is
doesn't
new
make
to
sense,
me.
though.
I'm having to try and accept this and understand this because I've always been like,
Right.
no. So
And you have to understand there would be another media partner involved.
Right,
The Big
and I
Ten
still
would
think
have to
that's going to
bring
be
in a fourth
Amazon.
media partner.
That would
More
be
than likely,
Amazon or
I tend to
ESPN.
agree with you, but there's going to be a fourth media partner that's going to carry the water for those two teams. And then if Notre Dame should join, all those teams would become a full member just based off of the Notre Dame escalator.
Incredible.
Wow.
That would be incredible. Bill G, who's one of our members, thanks for being here, Bill. He says Flugar going live at breakfast tomorrow. Stanford big situation. So tomorrow morning, go to Greg Flugar's show. That's peek around the corner on YouTube. I'm not sure the time. If he goes early usually, like 9 a.m. something like that Eastern.
You just got to wait for him to pop off there. But yeah, tune in around 9 Eastern to 12.
That's usually
Follow
when he's
him on Twitter.
Very much so. So thanks, Bill, for the heads up. I really appreciate it. Wow, look at this. Look at this. Wild, you're saying you could be right. Country roads, I'm sure, fun to talk about. I love that comment. That's fantastic.
Well, that's the truth. I mean, like that's how I see it. But it's a prediction, right? I could be wrong, and the Utes could struggle. Year one because these teams know how to play each other, right? Like it might take a couple of years, and if Whittingham retires, after this year or something, we're not anticipating that, but it could be a little tougher. So there's some stuff that could cause some haziness there. I could see it, but I'm feeling pretty confident too.
It's good to feel confident. It's good to be supporting your team. That's what we're all here for.
Hey, one more thing.
Yeah,
we had like 850 plus comments in the chat tonight.
Wow, that is crazy.
Super chats. We had a bunch of folks call in. Thank you all. Seriously, what a fun show. What an active show and stuff. I know that not everybody agreed with the football valuation approach, but I definitely appreciated the comments. I took notes, and so we actually will tweak some stuff and maybe represent one day. But really, thank you all in the Holy Rivals community. You holy homies, nice job tonight.
I want to do two things really quick. So I've received some gifts from people sending me stuff from my office. I really appreciate that. They're starting to go up. I've got a Kansas State banner. Where did I put that? Kansas State banner right here on my BYU flag. And then I've got my KU helmet. So Kansas is showing out in the Big 12 Mafia world. And that came from Summit Hawk and Brent Nichols. I want to make sure I recognize those guys. And then the other thing I want to do is we've now got a small sponsor, and that's BYU Mini Helmets. You can go to BYUMiniHelmets.com and get helmets like this, which is a really cool helmet. I want everybody to see how it's like an electric blue. It's actually a royal with a white face mask. It's kick-ass. And there's a QR code up there in the corner. If you guys scan that with your phone, you can go right to the website, buy one. They are awesome. I got 3 of them, and I am so impressed. So, and I know you wanted to show something.
Yeah, you know what? I pulled out for my K-State folks out there. I'm repping some K-State gear in the back here too, right? I don't know what this thing is. I've had it for years, but anyway, I'm putting it back up here with my Chiefs and Utes stuff. So,
all right, very good. It's dark in your office all of a sudden.
Man, I'll tell you what, I know it got dark outside.
Okay, everybody else, really appreciate you guys being here. This has been another fun one. Wow, we almost averaged 90 people live, which is incredible. Pilgrim, Moen, or Immaculate, you guys want to say anything else before we go?
I'm good. It's good seeing you again,
I was
Larry.
going to say, Stanford and Cal can rot over there with their votes where they smothered any expansion. As far as I'm concerned, let them rot. They're 2 of the ones that didn't want to take any of the Big 12 teams. They're 2 that didn't want to take San Diego State and SMU. Let them rot.
I love it.
Let them rot.
That is fantastic.
So did you find it ironic, Larry, that California and Stanford were being talked about with SMU to go to the ACC then? You're saying they voted against them, but now they're partnering with them. Or supposedly.
Well, it's kind of strange that Notre Dame is really pushing for Stanford and Cal to be in the ACC. So that Notre Dame would rather have them in the ACC than the Big Ten, if that's not a tell.
Yeah, it saves their independence.
Yeah, it saves their independence. I mean, I don't know how much sway they have, but to me, that shows me that Notre Dame does not want to be in the Big Ten.
They don't want to be forced into it. I think eventually they will make that choice, but for them, losing their independence is a very big deal for a lot of their backers and supporters and donors. Anyways, but it's a very big deal.
I'm gonna give you guys claps for those comments. I got myself down, so we're gonna start using that after people talk and visit our show, and obviously when we have chats and members join. We really appreciate all that stuff. I want you guys to know we're doing everything we can to improve our shows. So tomorrow night, I'm actually on another show. We're not doing a Mafia show tomorrow. I'm actually on Big Ten Ted's show on YouTube. I don't have the link. When I do, I will send it out on my Big 12 Mafia Twitter page, and everybody will be able to see it. I hope to see you there. And then on Wednesday, Big Ten Ted's coming to my show, and we're going to do Mafia on Wednesday. And we'll have some questions for him that are different than what we talked about on his show. So Moen and Immaculate, you guys are invited, and we'll kind of have a fun time there.
Sweet.
Right on.
All right, sounds good. Otherwise, everybody else, have a great night. Stay out of trouble. And make sure you come back here next time we advertise. Certainly, the Holy Rivals on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Love to see you. Peace out.
Go Utes.